is the National Arts and Humanities Month, and we welcome you to Northeast Annual Celebration of the Humanities. The humanities are the study of the myriad ways in which people from every period of history and from every corner of the globe process and document the human experience. Since humans have been able to so express themselves, we've used philosophy and literature, religion, art, music, history, and language to understand and record our world. The humanities give us a sense of connection, both with those who come before us, with those that are in the world today in different places, and a way to leave our legacy for future generations. In other words, the humanities give us a frame of reference to understand and share the human experience in our world. Through the sponsorship of the Mississippi Humanities Council, Northeast celebrates the humanities every year by honoring one of our outstanding instructors. We are pleased today that one of our former Humanities Teachers of the Year, Craig Ellis Sasser, will be introducing this year's honoree. Mr. Sasser is currently the Associate Vice President of Institutional Effectiveness, but previously he served as one of our English instructors. And as a sign of respect to this year's honoree, please take this moment as Mr. Sasser comes to make sure your cell phones are silenced. Mr. Sasser.
Thank you, Ms. Balder, and welcome to everybody. It's good to be here and to introduce my friend, Jeff Tuttle. Before I begin formally introducing him, we were a couple doors down from each other in Anderson Hall. And being one of the few males in that building, we bonded. And that's nothing against anybody else in Anderson Hall, but you have to stick together when your numbers are few. Jeff is an Oxford, Mississippi native. He's a Lafayette County High School graduated with honors. And I didn't ask what year, and long time ago, he says. He got his undergraduate and graduate degrees from Ole Miss, taught high school English and Spanish for 7 years before moving over to private sector. He worked in Latin American sales and customer service at FMC Corporation there in Saltillo, and then joined the Northeast family in 2003 as a counselor / caseworker in the workforce division. And he shares stories about those memories all the time doing that job, and I really think that has informed his instructor duties, which he joined in 2006, teaching elementary and intermediate Spanish over in Anderson Hall. Mr. Tuttle's family includes his wife Cheryl and 3 children, Brian, Stephanie, and Stacy. And I see here, always smiling, like all the pictures I've seen, is his first granddaughter, Sydney Beth. So it's good to have them here. And I want to say one other thing before I turn it over to Jeff. I was listening last week to a sermon series from this guy, Mark Driscoll, from Marsdale Church out in Washington. And I'm not going to be didactic with this, but just to introduce this and prove a point. Something from this sermon that Driscoll says is, salvation occurs in a moment, but discipleship takes a lifetime. And I thought that applies really to what we do as educators every day, and take it out of the context of religion. It's not all that difficult to become a teacher. You go through the coursework in college, you get to 120 hours, you student teach, and they turn you loose, give you a classroom without a whole lot of experience or prior education, honestly. So anybody can do that. However, it does take a lifetime to be a real educator. And I think Mr. Tuttle has done that and embodies that for his students. So I turn it over to our Humanities Teacher of the Year, Jeff Tuttle.
There he goes. Y'all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. I appreciate you introducing me with a preacher. That'll help. Everything I say now, get out of the way. I'm not used to Howard. That's what we call it. Everything I say now has been prefaced. Was a Baptist preacher? Non-denomination.
Right.
That's pretty close. All right. So, yeah, everything I say has been endorsed by a preacher, and that makes it a lot better. As a matter of fact, I'm surrounded by preachers. My father-in-law's been a preacher forever. I've known my present pastor and preacher since he was 8 or 10 years old, and now he's my pastor, and I'm a whole lot older than he is. Preachers are a good thing to have around. We're not going to talk about preachers today in particular. I got informed that I've been selected to get this honor some time ago, and I've been working diligently ever since to try and make sense out of these thoughts that were floating around in my head as to what do I want to say, how do I want to say it, why do I want to say it, what do I want to give you to take away from here. So it has finally come together. I just hope in a good way, and we'll see. But being a teacher and an educator, I can't resist when I get a bunch of smart people together, giving them a quiz. When I found out, I asked myself, my first thought was, what do you think? What do you think? D? Yeah, D is the answer. I don't know if D has actually ever happened before. Cindy throws things at me a lot. That's not because it means to anything. But I have moonwalked, and it has ended up on YouTube. A couple of years ago, I think. Yeah, because my students started coming in the room showing me it on YouTube, and I didn't know what YouTube was back then. There I was, moonwalking across another stage somewhere on campus, and I think I had pink gloves on or something. I'm not going to do that today, unless you want me to. Amanda, don't say it. I think Amanda's who's my student? Anybody? My students here? Look at, there she is back there, Amanda Burris, on the back row. Came to see me and hear me. I appreciate that. Good. Even though, I don't know if I said I'd give you points, I'm probably going to give you points for that. Good for you. You need them too. Get used to this thing. Well, I'm not used to being like this close to the projector. We'll see. So forgive my technical difficulties. So my question was, well, what is my point? What do I want to make? I don't want to get you to take something of value away with you today. And then I had to start thinking back 40 some odd years. And how does this fit in? What do I want to say? What can I carve out of that from my lifetime? And the first thing I tried to do was figure out remind myself, I guess, where we manage. Carl has done that. I think Carl and I were looking at part of the same source, and that's okay. Because the first thing I did was start just looking for definitions. Okay? And I highlighted what I thought was important. The first thing my mind did was go to what subjects are we talking about here. I mean, I'm in the humanities division, so I know Spanish is part of the humanities, and I'm surrounded by all these English and lit teachers, so I know it must be too. And then there's Bill, and then there's like that. So I kind of had a pretty good idea, but I wanted to make sure, and this is definitely not all, I was glad that art and music were even included under that umbrella. And those two things, oh, no, not art, sorry. I'm not an artist. Music has always been a big part of my life, and still is. Even in the classroom where I am now, believe it or not. So, just to get us all on the same page, this is what humanities, one of the things that humanities can be defined as. When I looked at that, it took a while, but the light bulb finally went on. As I get older, it takes longer for the light bulb to come on. And I guess one of these days it'll burn out and it just won't come on. I don't know. But anyway, that moment did happen. And these thoughts that I've had orbiting my mind for the last, I guess, 2 or 3 years, that I really wanted some forum to get out and share with people, finally came together. And then I get this forum to share with some people. I'm glad you're here today to do that. I hope it gives you something. So I want to introduce you to some people and some places and some events that you may or may not be familiar with. And I guess first, let us start with there. This is my mom. Okay. get that sound back on first. It's a little difficult to talk about Mom. She hasn't been on very long. I almost hesitated to talk about her, but I really can't do justice to what I want to say today without paying her some honors that she deserves. We look back at our own lives, where we were brought up, our physical surroundings, our upbringing. Each one of us has a different one. But I'll tell you about hers. I guess I was about 8 years old, and every other Sunday or so after church, we'd go to one of the other grandparents' house to eat. Right? So y'all may be in on that too. But I was snooping around. I was bad about that when I was a kid. I was snooping. I had to know stuff. I'd just get in trouble snooping all the time. So I was snooping around outside of her mother's house and noticed that a couple of boards had peeled away from the side of the house. And I just kind of looked back there. There were logs chinked with mud. And the siding was just fake. I mean, it made it look like a house. This thing was a log cabin. Really. It was huge for a log cabin. That's what it was. That's where she grew up. And probably at least one generation before her in this log cabin. Out back there was an outhouse. I think it was a four-holer. I don't want to remember that. When we went to Grandma's to eat, it was after eat, I was ready to go to the house because we had a real bathroom. I did not want to make the journey. It was dark. It was dangerous. But, you know, that's how she grew up. And we joke about it a lot. They had a coal heater. The old pot-bellied coal heater. They had a pile of coal in the yard. That was heat. Air conditioning was open window. Telephones, no, we didn't go to town. We used a telephone. Oil lamps. Electricity came eventually. So that, you know, that's where she came from. But she was a smart lady. She read and wrote constantly. And so she gave me that. And she spent her working life in Lafayette County Schools, about 25 years or more, working with students who had problems reading and writing. That's what she did. She took my brother and me to every library, every bookstore in Lafayette County on numerous occasions, just about every Saturday. We'd end up in town back then, you know, to go get groceries or whatever. And I would talk her into going to somewhere so I could buy a model plane to build. She said, yes, but first we're going to the library and we'll get 2 books. Okay, whatever. So I read. And she really encouraged that desire in me to investigate, to read, and to know about things that I didn't know before. So if I had to credit one person with stoking my interest, creating it, and growing it, it would have to be Mom. I don't want to say Dad didn't have anything to do with that. He approaches things in a different way. Amen? Whew. That's a whole nother lecture. But anyway, a great deal of influence. We have to give credit to her. So we had to go through stuff after she left this walk of life. And oh gosh, stacked of books. Stacked. 2 sofas stacked from the seat cushion to the top of the back. For starters, with books. And she read every one of them all the time. Just to kind of gives you an idea of what kind of passion she had for literature and just exploration. Dad's still going through this stuff today. And this was a couple of years back, right around Christmas, that we had let her go. But, like I said, she gave me a connection. As we mentioned already, humanities is about connections of one kind or another. So got through that, they never think I would. And I think right now, a little levity would help us all. So let me take you on, I don't know if you call it levity or not. I'm going to take you back now. Anybody remember the 70s? Okay. I mean, how many of you are alive in the 70s and able to participate? Okay. So you probably remember things, well, I'll take you back to the mid-70s. I'll take you back to Yakima, Mississippi. If you don't live there, you probably call it Yakima. But the natives call it Yakima. Okay? It's just east of Oxford over there in the Promised Land. Okay? And so what do I remember? I remember the beaches. We do that in class, by the way, every once in a while. We throw some music out. We like to start with music. Now, most of us in Spanish, so a lot of my people don't have a clue what this, you know, they just like it. That's fine, too. Yeah, back, you know, mid-70s, there I am, let's say mid-70s, I would have been 10, 12-ish, somewhere in there. No, never mind. Bee Gees, roller disco, yes, every Friday night or Saturday night. And then there was this place in my other grandparents' house, my dad's parents, where they kept stuff. There's a closet. I'm a snooper. I went back to snoop. They were asleep. It's in the middle of the day. You don't even think about it. You're working out there. Came in for lunch. I would snoop. They'd be next door. There's this closet, and the shelf at the top had shoe boxes. Well, you know there's stuff in there. So I got them down and looked. And I snooped, and I found stuff. And I kept coming across this one person and his memorabilia. Postcards from World War II, from the prison camp, insignia, all kinds of stuff. And at that age, I had actually read enough history to kind of know what he was talking about. But before I go into depth with that, the thing I want us to understand about humanities, again, just to go back, is that up top, they introduce us to people we've never met. I have never met this person, still. Places we've never visited, and ideas that may have never crossed our minds, and they connect us with other people, with our heritage and our history. And they do. So let me show you a little bit, tell you a little bit about it. This is Tom Adams. His whole name was Thomas Jefferson Adams. I guess they planned that. I don't know. He would be my great uncle on my dad's side. And this is on the left as he entered service in World War II. And on the right, probably about 1946 or 8 or somewhere in there, after he came back home from Europe. In the interim, he was a POW of Germany. He was on one of these, 1944, B-24 Liberator. He was up here, which is where I'd love to be if I were in one of these. That'd be a good place to be. You got 250 calibers right there in front of you. Nobody can mess with you. First mission, got shot down and captured. Of the 10 people in the plane, 3 made it out alive. He was one of the 3, and he was the only enlisted person to make it out. But he got captured really quick after that. You know, I heard stories about him, and I would continue to snoop around and see if I could find anything else about him. And I kept coming up kind of short, but as I got older, there's a little bit more. I think that's my favorite picture on the left there. Don't mess with me. Yeah, guy with a machine gun. There's his plane on the right. And that's the actual plane as far as I know. I've tried to approximate it here. Probably do a very good job of that. Just to give you an idea of his experience, is kind of what I'm doing here. That's after the war. They were trying to figure out what exactly happened on the mission, and they did interviews. And he was good enough to write them this letter while he was a student at Ole Miss studying GI Bill after the war. And basically, he knew what he knew, and that's all he could say. The reason I put that in there is, you can look and as you read this, there's a form to this. There's a flow to it. There's a directness to it. English teachers, y'all can appreciate this, I'm sure. I started out teaching English too. But to me, this is a good example of humanities in action. He was able to tell what he needed to tell to the people who were interested in a pretty concise manner. And this is just part of what I've found so far. So there's some other stuff out there. To get a little deeper into his history, I heard stories about him. People would tell me things. Some of the things I was told I found out later were incorrect. As I did the research, I found out the real story. And kind of cleared up some myths that I had had since I was younger. So I used the experience that I had in high school, even in elementary school, in college, working with the humanities to get to the bottom, so to speak, or at least as close to the bottom as I thought I could to what was going on with him and his life, how it affected me. And just for your information, this is Stalag 17B. This is where he was interned for about a year and a half. It may not look like such a big deal as far as, oh, so, I mean, they're walking around, everybody's cool. No, it's a prison camp. This is a shot from one of the corners of the camp. The camp was originally started at the beginning of the war as a concentration camp. You went in, but you didn't get out. And they converted it to a POW camp, designed to hold about 12,000 to 15,000 people. By the end of the war, there were nearly 30,000 in it. And the rations were very short, the sanitation was almost non-existent, and so on. So that's the kind of thing that he had to endure. One thing that I found that I thought was interesting was the way they had to live every day was like this. This was posted for everyone to see by the Germans. This was your one and only warning that if you went and touched or tried to cross that wire, they called it the deadline, you were dead without warning immediately. You know your next explanation. I like the last part. In emergency cases, if you get sick and have to go outside, do shout loudly to the nearest guard. Why would you do? Hey, I'm out of here. No, I wouldn't want them to know I was out there at that point. But anyway, that's what he had to deal with every day. And in the face of that, another thing that I thought was interesting is the POWs got together, and in the face of rules like that, everything they did was governed by a rule. Do not do this. Do it this way, etc. They started a school. And the school taught basically humanities. There was some math and science in there too, but the majority of what they taught were things like English, Spanish, French, German, literature, etc. Salesmanship, even. That's in there. That's what this guy got his certificate for. In the face of that much of a rigid schedule and rules, they were able to start this, and several thousand American POWs went through this and got these certificates. Okay, well, why? Well, there's two reasons. One, because why stop learning? The second reason was it was opposition, it was resistance to the attitude of the camp, to the leadership of the camp. They wanted to put you down. They wanted to destroy everything you could hold on to while you were there, so that you couldn't resist. And one of the ways they resisted was through study. And they studied humanities when they did that. It was accessible. It was something they could do. And a lot of them based their careers after the war on what they learned in this camp, by the way. So, to me, that was pretty eye-opening. They kept their minds sharp. They resisted authority. They maintained their unit cohesion. They stuck together. And they did this. Well, I feel like taking you on a rabbit hunt like I had a couple of weeks ago. We heard a lot of barking, but didn't see a lot of rabbits. Believe me, there's a point to all this, and it's like humanities, the definition is said in a couple of these slides. Right. Connections. Maybe I need a baby. Hang on. Do I need a baby? No? All right. Okay. Yeah, you keep talking. Connections from my past, my near present, my present now, and my future. And this all happened because I've studied humanities pretty much all my life. Different areas of it. But if it's something that you tend to ask yourself, why? I'm talking to students now. Why am I taking humanities? Hopefully, in the next minute or two, we can kind of put that together. So I've been a student and a teacher of humanities for pretty much my adult life, with a little break here and there every once in a while. So my students have asked me before, did you ever see yourself teaching Spanish? And my answer to that is no, absolutely not. I never planned at the outset to be doing what I'm doing now. Anybody else in that situation? Okay. Yeah. And students, you may have your mind set on one thing now, and you're zeroed in on it. Don't be surprised if you look back 20 years from now and you're nowhere near it. I'm saying you're in a good place, but you're nowhere near where you thought you would be. It happens. Humanities fits into that, believe it or not. So no, I didn't see myself as a Spanish instructor. When I was in Ole Miss, I started my 12 hours of Spanish that I had to take. They told me I had to take it. I didn't have a choice. Okay, fine, sign me up. That was in the way. I wanted to be a band director. I wanted to be a choral director. I wanted to be a professional singer. Whatever. Okay, but they put me in Spanish. Why? I really didn't know then. I did okay, believe it or not. Later on, it made sense, but it took a while. What about in high school? All those English and history courses I had to take. The state said. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I wanted to join the Air Force and fly F-15s, F-16s, whatever other plane they would let me have. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. To me, those courses back then were just hoops I had to jump through. It didn't matter. Believe me, they matter now. I'm in a different place. I'm doing different things, but they were worth it. So I'm the Spanish guy now. And that would be another lecture altogether. I will say that knowing another language, and I told my students this, it's opened doors that never would have opened before. There's no way. I mean, I've got friends now that I've never had, would have never had if I didn't speak another language. It's just that way. So any way you can broaden your horizons through humanities is a good thing. It pays off. It's worth it. But you do have to do your part, and you do have to pay your dues. And that involves a lot of work. So why am I taking classes in humanities? Lots of students say. All right, let me approach it from a different angle if I can. From experience, they just contribute to your overall professionality. If you're going to be a professional in anything, humanities will ground you in that. They will. And then maybe approach it from the employment standpoint. And I know that's heavy on a lot of people's minds for students. You want a job. When you get done, you want a job to be out there, right? Okay. There's some studies that have been done, and Dr. Kehoe actually shared one with me recently. Chronicle of Higher Education, Northeast University did this, did a little research. What do employers really want from a student? Okay, I'll let you kind of look at that for a second. The last part, 2/3 of adults and 3/4 of employers agreed that being well-rounded with a range of abilities is more important than having industry expertise, because those things you can learn on the job. I've done that. I've been there. When I went to FMC, I just come out of 7 years in the classroom. I went for a 4.5, 5-year stint at FMC, completely removed from the classroom entirely. And the first day I showed up, they sat me at a computer in the office. How many times did I run a computer? None. None. At all. I had to learn. I had to learn what commands told me what. I did it. I didn't have any formal training in that. What I did have was a background in humanities. And it helped. It got me grounded, it got me started, it let me actually move up and advance some in that position. Don't sell it short. On-the-job training is going to happen at some point. Communication and critical thinking were the things that I brought to that position, and that's what they were looking for. It's when a professor puts in front of you an assignment that makes you wonder, why exactly are we doing this? Maybe compare some things, maybe contrast some, I don't know what it could be. I know Amanda probably wonders in Spanish class, why are we doing this? Because I've seen the look, and it happens. But believe me, the more you can do that, the more you can take things that seem totally unrelated or things that seem totally irrelevant to you right now and do those on a regular basis and just sell out to it. Just, okay, fine. That's what I need to do right now. I'm going to do the best I can at it and do it. At some point, an employer is going to put you in the same position and say, I need you to do this. And you're thinking to yourself, I don't know how to do this. That's okay. We're going to train you. That's what we do. And you go from there. So you're getting a lot of valuable experience in the classroom in a humanities class doing just that. Don't sell it short. I know it's tough sometimes and you ask a lot of questions, but believe me, I'm just speaking from personal experience, it's worth the effort. One other thing, from Dr. Summit at Stanford University, a quote from her. I like the last part. General education. I mean, humanities gets labeled that sometimes. It does. It shouldn't be seen as just a hoop you have to jump through to get to the major. You get the piece of paper that says you have a bachelor's in or a master's in or whatever, but as the pathway that transforms your knowledge of a discipline, like Spanish, like literature, etc., into interdisciplinary wisdom. You know the difference between knowledge and wisdom? Anybody want to take a stab at that? They're not the same, are they? It's not a rhetorical question. They're not the same, are they? Okay. If you have a lot of knowledge, does that mean you're wise? Do you know people who have a lot of knowledge but aren't very wise? That was a rhetorical question. You weren't supposed to answer that out loud. Yeah. Okay. If you have a lot of knowledge, that's great. But if you don't know how to apply it, that's a problem. Wisdom is the ability to apply knowledge to situations. Right? So, when you're sitting in that classroom, student, and you're in that, what if you're in a Spanish class? And your major is, what's your major, man? You told me before. What is it?
Social work.
Social work. When I say, man, look at that, social work. What are the chances for walking into a household where they don't speak English and they speak Spanish? Guess what? I've done that for social workers. I've been the guy who goes along to translate. Okay? So she's got a pretty high probability of running into that. It's good that she's taking Spanish. But somebody in a totally unrelated field, what am I sitting in a Spanish class for? You never know. And you won't know till you get there. And when you get there, you may be headed somewhere else. That's just the way life is. So, take it for what it is. It's a learning experience. Doesn't matter. If I were teaching Amanda Russian, the same thing would apply. Don't shake your head. Agree with me. Yeah. That's kind of what humanities do. They lead us in different directions, sure, but they lead us. And they help us get where we're going. Anybody got a question or a comment? Anything about Tommy that I didn't answer? Anything about the prison camp? Anything about anything? Carl says no.
Where in Germany was that? Where exactly in Germany was that?
Well, he was actually in Austria.
Oh, Austria.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You know, the Germans, by then, everything was controlled by Germany. He was in Krebs, Austria. Yeah. And at the end of the war, when liberation got real close, you know, the Russians coming from this way, the Allies coming from the other, the Germans deserted the camp, basically. But they took with them, they went towards the west. They didn't want to be captured by Russians, that was a bad thing. Okay, you would not come out of that alive. So they went towards the Allies. They took able-bodied prisoners with them, and they made them march several hundred miles in the winter. Very little food, water, supplies for how many days was it? 3 to 5, I think. And the ones that weren't ambulatory, they had to stay in prison here in the hospital. I don't know if Tommy went on the march or if he stayed in the hospital.
Was that his certificate?
That was actually somebody else's. I'm sure he got some. It's about 2,000 when he did. Yeah, he was in Austria. He got shot down over Kiel, Germany. I don't know if that's close or not, but they were bombing some shipyards. Almost made it. Almost got back in the bomber stream. By the time they got there, 688 rounds hit right dead center, back here, cut it in half. 3 of them got out. Nobody else got out. Anybody else? Thanks for coming. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Tuttle, for helping us to understand the role that the humanities plays in making sense of our lives and making sense of our relationships with others and the world around us. We certainly understand from your presentation why you were selected as the 2013 Northeast Humanities Teacher of the Year. That award is sponsored by the Mississippi Humanities Council. The MHC is a nonprofit organization that works to promote the humanities through various programming and initiatives. And the council knows that most of us first learn to appreciate, to understand, and to even love the humanities through gifted instructors like Mr. Tuttle. And therefore, every year they allow and provide the means for institutions of higher learning across the state to honor the Teachers of the Year. They will also honor Mr. Tuttle at a statewide humanities banquet in Jackson in February, where he will receive a cash award of $500. Let's give another big round of applause. I would now like to invite all the faculty and staff and special friends of Mr. Tuttle's to a reception on the other side of the room. Thank you all so much for joining us today.